Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, the room plunged into absolute silence? Then, almost as if by reflex, you look at the clock and it reads exactly 3 a.m. Your heart races. A strange sensation runs through your body. But what if I told you this isn't just a coincidence? What if, in fact, it's a silent call, coming from a dimension few can perceive, but which could be surrounding you right now? Today, you'll discover the hidden secret behind this phenomenon that has intrigued spiritualists, scholars, and religious people for centuries. A truth that could shake everything you've believed until now. If you seek to understand the mysteries hidden within the pages of the Bible and strengthen your connection with the divine, like and subscribe to the channel now. This way, you'll ensure you don't miss any revelations, especially those that may be deleted from the internet at any time. Now take a deep breath and prepare yourself. What I'm about to reveal to you about waking up at 3 a.m. could forever change the way you view the spiritual world. Have you ever noticed how there's a time when, without any logical explanation, thousands, maybe millions of people around the world simply wake up? Always at the same moment, 3 a.m. It's as if an invisible force pulls them back to consciousness, abruptly interrupting their sleep, leaving them restless, anxious, often with a strange feeling that they are not alone. This phenomenon is as old as humanity itself. Across cultures, time periods, and beliefs, there are clear records that this time of day holds profound spiritual significance. It is not therefore a simple coincidence, but a mysterious pattern that spans centuries and that many believe to be a calling from God Himself. In popular tradition, this moment became known as the dead hour or spiritual hour. A time when the physical world plunges into absolute silence while the spiritual world awakens. Mystics claim that it is at this moment that the veil between the visible and the invisible becomes thinner, more fragile, and that spiritual entities, good or evil, circulate freely through the world of men. In various accounts, people report feeling presences around them when they wake up at this time. Others report a sudden and intense need to pray, without even understanding why. There are still those who describe vivid, almost prophetic dreams that force them to get up, as if a message were being transmitted from above and sleep were an impossible barrier to maintain. The curious thing is that even when we consult modern sleep or psychology experts, the explanation falls short. Yes, some try to attribute it to sleep disorders, stress, or even the physiological need to wake up. But even these analyses ultimately recognize that there are cases where the experience is transcendental, deeply emotional and spiritual, as if someone or something were truly calling. And this pattern is so strong that in several religious and spiritual traditions, waking up at 3 a.m. is considered a spiritual sign. In the Christian tradition, for example, the night was divided into 4 watches. The first from sunset to 9 p.m., the second from 9 a.m. to midnight, the third from midnight to 3 a.m., and finally, the fourth watch from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. It is precisely during this last watch that the most important events in the spiritual world occur. Many believe this is the period of greatest supernatural activity, when spiritual battles are fought, when divine messages are sent, and when sensitive souls are awakened to connect with the purpose the Creator has designed for them. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13, verse 35, Jesus says, "Therefore keep watch, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or in the morning." Here, The Bible calls us to constant vigilance because moments of greatest spiritual importance can happen at any moment, but especially when most people are asleep. And it is precisely at this time, between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., that many report having profound spiritual experiences, visions, deliverances, revelations, or simply a call to silent prayer. The number 3 occupies a prominent place throughout the biblical narrative. It is not just any numeral, but a sacred symbol charged with profound and hidden meanings, pointing to divine unity and the most sublime spiritual mysteries. From the first pages of the Bible, the number 3 appears as a mark of completeness and spiritual perfection. God is presented as a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Christ rises on the 3rd day. Peter denies Jesus 3 times. The Apostle Paul prays 3 times for the thorn in his flesh to be removed. Jonah remains 3 days in the belly of the great fish. This pattern represents not only the end of a cycle, but also a new beginning, a transition between death and life, between the natural and the supernatural. Therefore, when we talk about the phenomenon of waking up at 3 a.m., we are not dealing with a random time, but with a powerful spiritual symbol, a moment in which God seems to choose to awaken the sensitive to a special encounter. Jesus, for example, often prayed during the early morning hours. Mark 1:35 says, "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and left the house by himself, went off to a solitary place, and there he prayed." Understand, Jesus sought the silent dawn to speak with the Father. The environment of darkness and silence fostered a deeper spiritual connection, and this same pattern is followed to this day by mystics and spiritual intercessors. On another occasion recorded in Matthew 14:25, Jesus walks on the water during the 4th watch of the night, that is, exactly between 3 and 6 a.m. There, in a moment of complete vulnerability among the disciples who were struggling against the wind and waves, Christ reveals himself with one of the greatest miracles of his life. Now, does this call apply to everyone or just some? Is God waking you up, or are you just waking up on your own? Not everyone wakes up at 3 a.m. And not everyone who does realize the true spiritual meaning of this calling. But there's a very clear profile. These are those God chooses for something greater. Waking up at this time is not a privilege, nor a condemnation, but a sign that the person has an above-average spiritual sensitivity or is being invited, even if they do not realize it, to develop this sensitivity. Intercessors, for example, are called by God to pray for others. Often God awakens these people because it is a time of intense spiritual warfare. Others awaken because they are experiencing a moment of great risk, whether spiritual, emotional, or physical. God, in his infinite mercy, awakens them so they can become alert, reconnect, and change the path they were on. And there are those who, without realizing it, are being called to a specific spiritual mission. God awakens them not to warn of a danger, but to commission them, to give them a responsibility, a word, a gift. Now, the most important thing, if you are being woken up at 3 a.m., this may be a divine invitation to leave superficiality and dive into a deeper spiritual dimension. And no, this doesn't mean you're cursed or that there's something wrong with you. On the contrary, it could be just the opposite. A sign that God is entrusting you with a spiritual mission, something many will never experience. So what to do now? Many people, upon waking up at 3 a.m., simply roll over, adjust their pillow, and try to get back to sleep as quickly as possible, without even realizing they may be ignoring one of the most important moments in their spiritual life. The first and most important step is to not ignore it. Even if you're feeling sleepy, even if your body is tired, get up, pray, even if you don't know why. Write down impressions, dreams, or revelations. Keep your heart and mind open. Turn this moment into a spiritual habit. Now you might be asking yourself, but what if I just ignore this call? What could happen to me? Ignoring God's call at 3 a.m. may seem harmless, but it's not. When God awakens someone at this time, it's not a mere inconvenience, but a sacred invitation. And ignoring this opportunity can have profound and often irreversible consequences. Ignoring this call generates spiritual insensitivity, loss of protection, and perhaps most seriously, loss of the mission that God wanted to entrust to you. Now, what happens when you answer the call? What happens to those who obey and get up, even without understanding, to seek God at 3 a.m.? The benefits are extraordinary: spiritual strengthening, divine protection, development of spiritual gifts, revelation of purpose, and above all, intimacy with God. But why does God choose this particular time? There is a hidden secret. At 3 a.m., there is a unique combination of spiritual, physiological, and cosmic factors, a convergence point where the physical world is most vulnerable and the spiritual world is most active. Several theologians, scholars, and spiritual leaders point out that spiritual activity peaks between 3 and 4 a.m. Angelic and demonic forces operate intensely during this time, and when you wake up, you're not alone. Now that you know the hidden secret behind being woken up at 3 a.m., I need to ask you, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to ignore it, turn to the side and try to sleep? Or will you, from now on, get up and answer the call the Creator is making directly to you? If you want to continue unraveling the hidden mysteries of the Bible, if you want to learn more about the spiritual signs that God sends, then subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell, leave your like and comment here. Have you ever been woken up at 3 a.m.? What did you feel? See you at the next mystery, or maybe at the next dawn at 3 a.m.